Welcome to the Small Group Leader Podcast, a podcast by small group leaders for small group leaders to be equipped and encouraged as they make disciples for Jesus. My name is Derek Lynn, and we're going through a 6-part series on the 6 wins of a small group leader. And in this episode, we'll be looking at win number 5, Delegate Responsibility to create maturity. We are getting to sit down and talk to Alex Rodriguez, the National Director for Chi Alpha Campus Ministries and the creator of the 6 Wins of a Small Group Leader teaching. And then we'll get to talk to Ty Cannaday, a small group leader at Radford University, and hear an incredible story about what can happen when you really challenge the people in your small group to take up responsibility in order for them to become creators in the kingdom and not just consumers. First, let's go ahead and listen to a clip from Alex's message on the 5th win of a small group leader.
This discipline does not come easy in our American culture. We grew up in a culture that coined the phrase, if you want to do something right, do it yourself. And that philosophy has stunted the growth of leadership all across our country. And it's different than an opportunity that was given to me. When I first joined the National Chi Alpha team, my direct report was a man named Harvey Herman, and this doctorate in leadership was a founding member of Chi Alpha. He literally wrote our book on discipleship, the most long-standing resource we've ever had, translated into 46-something different languages. He planted Chi Alphas well before I was born, so when I moved into the office to work under him, I fully expected a philosophy that would limit me to minuscule tasks as he did the real work of responsibility. But what I found was the very opposite. I would come into his office like 20-something times a day to ask a question or present an idea, and Harvey, who knows better than me, would respond with the question, what do you think we should do? Followed by empowering me to own whatever I was proposing. And I would try to find his sacred cows, but he either had none or he held everything with such a loose grip, and the result was me learning firsthand which decisions turn into touchdowns that I should repeat and which decisions turn into interceptions that nobody should ever do again. And Harvey gave away responsibility because he believed in this leadership principle articulated by Craig Rochelle. If you delegate tasks, you create followers. But when you delegate authority, you create leaders. And the best leaders understand this 5th win of small group leading. Delegate responsibility to create maturity. This is seen in the ministry of Jesus, who came to save the world and then left earth not fully saved, while entrusting his apostles to reach it. This is why the Bible tells us that Jesus and Peter paid the temple tax, but not the rest, which is a cultural nod to the fact that the rest of his small group were teenagers, not adults. Jesus entrusted teenagers, people your age, to heal the sick, to raise the dead, to cleanse the leprous social outcasts, to cast out demons, to make disciples of all nations. Without delegating responsibility to teenage disciples, they do not become mature apostles. If you are a small group leader who insists on doing everything yourself, you are a leader by position, but you're not being a leader by disposition, because leadership delegates responsibility to create maturity.
All right, we're back here with Alex Rodriguez, getting ready to look at the next win of a small group leader, delegate responsibility, create maturity. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, actually.
We're recording this and it's fall outside right now.
Oh, it feels so
Even
good.
if this gets released in the spring, it feels,
that
feels
dates
60
it.
degrees
That
outside. I
dates it
really
right
enjoy
there.
it. This never happened in New Mexico.
I know. I get to wear a jacket all day.
Feels wonderful.
And that's a joyful time, along with reading my Bible. So, looking at delegate responsibility to create maturity. How do you know if someone is ready to have responsibility given to them? Do you just go into the first small group of the semester, you got 5 fresh faces, you met them just a couple days before, and you start handing out responsibility like zebra cakes to whoever comes into the door? How do you know when they're ready to have it?
I don't know if I've ever had a zebra cake, for one.
Oh, you're missing out.
Sounds delicious. But for 2, Winky Pretney has this very, very unique story about responsibility. I hope this answers your question. He says there was a new pastor that came into a church and preached this amazing sermon on a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Everyone repented. The altars were full. Angels showed up. It was phenomenal. The elders believed that they had found the right pastor. They couldn't wait to hear the sermon that same Sunday night. So then Sunday night comes around. Everyone, and that Sunday night service is packed, which is normally not happening in church culture.
Yeah.
But everyone shows up. Pastor preaches the exact same sermon. The exact same response happens. Everyone repents. Altars are full. The elders are thinking, we just found the greatest preacher in the history of the world.
Of course.
So Wednesday night comes, and they're very excited. They can't wait to hear what the preacher's going to preach next. Pastor gets up, preaches the exact same sermon that they did Sunday night and Sunday morning. Now the elders are worried. They get together and they say, is this guy a one-hit wonder? What exactly is happening?
Yeah.
If he does it again, we'll call him on it. So the next Sunday comes. This is the fourth message. The new pastor gets up, preaches the exact same message for the fourth time in a row.
Yeah.
Elders come up afterward and say, Pastor, that was a great sermon, but do you have anything else? We've heard that one before. And the pastor says, of course I do. I have thousands of sermons, but until you do what I told you to do the first time, you're not going to get a new sermon.
Dang.
Alexander McLaren says duty opens by degrees. The only way to go far is to go as far as you can currently see.
Yeah.
We believe that knowledge equals responsibility. So how do you know if someone is ready for more responsibility?
Yeah.
You ask, are they being responsible to the knowledge they currently have?
That's good.
Are they living up to the Bible they know? Are they living up to the commands that they have? That's how you do it.
Is there a progression to responsibility, or would you say the deep end of the pool is the best place to throw someone in?
Man, that's a good question, and I suppose the answer might differ from one Chi Alpha director to another.
Yeah.
E. Stanley Jones does say we need to give people crowns and watch them grow into it. I think that's a phenomenal quote, because he's saying you got to trust people to take on something that they, on paper, might not necessarily be qualified for.
Yeah.
That goes in line with something Craig Rochelle said on his podcast, that if someone can do something, I think it was about maybe 60% as good as he can, then he'll delegate it away. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that E. Stanley Jones quote again, you give people a crown and you watch them grow into it. But we also believe there needs to be a model first of what to do and who to be, so that when the person has a crown, they know how to rule.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Harvey Herman breaks it down this way. There's the 4 degrees of discipleship, in other words, 4 degrees of responsibility. You do it first, and then the small group watches. You do it first, and then they help. They do it, and then you help, and then they do it, and you watch. That's the completion of this delegation of responsibility to create maturity. Responsibility should be demonstrated first and then delegated next.
Yeah.
And if this still sounds intimidating about delegating too much or perhaps too soon, let's pause for a moment just to take a look at what Jesus, the King of Kings, did. Jesus' small group, biblically speaking, were a bunch of teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And in Matthew 10:7, one of their first assignments, not their last, not like their 50th, but one of their very first assignments as teenagers, Matthew 10:7, was to preach the gospel, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, and cast out demons.
Man.
That's a pretty big first lesson, you know?
Yeah.
So if Jesus entrusted 18-year-olds with casting out demons and raising the dead, I think we can entrust 20-year-olds with growing small groups and delivering lessons and having one-on-ones and building people and finding, feeding, and fighting for the lost lambs of God. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
If you're a small group leader then who insists on doing everything yourself, you're a leader by a position, but you're not a leader by disposition. This is the disposition of our small group leaders. Win number 5, delegate responsibility to create maturity.
Dude, that's good. So we're given responsibility. What if they mess up? What if they do something wrong? And you're sitting back going, oh, if I would have just done that, it wouldn't have gotten messed up. What happens when they drop the ball, when they do something wrong?
I think if that's a great question. For one, we got to ask, are we setting them up for success in the first place? Or are you handing them a car that has no wheels?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's almost like saying, "Here, have this Chi Alpha with 5 small group leaders who all hate each other, and the staff has already communicated their insubordination is scheduled for September. Oh, and by the way, you owe the bank $500 million." Very few leaders are going to succeed if that's what's handed to them. You know, does your car that you're giving them have wheels? Look at that first.
Great illustration.
Point number 2, though, I think people can and do make mistakes, and that's okay. One of the greatest things I love about Harvey Herman is I'll pitch to him ideas to train an entire nation, and he won't really give me any input. Like it's almost like he's letting me throw my own passes to see so I can discover if there'll be touchdowns and interceptions, because I'm going to own what it is that I do, and that's honestly the best way to learn. It's not theory anymore, it's reality, and responsibility can do that. So people are going to make mistakes. We just have to decide if a mistake is a strike or an out, or if someone burned down the baseball stadium and therefore, can't work here anymore.
Well, let's go home.
So I think you just got to be conscious of that. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's clear.
No, yeah, that makes total sense. So what does learning how to delegate responsibility do within a small group leader who actually does this and applies this?
Craig Rochelle, going back to him, I suppose he's special. He gets 2 references in the same podcast today, but he's very, very brilliant. He says this. He says, if you delegate tasks, you create followers.
Okay.
But if you delegate authority, you create leaders.
Yeah.
I think the small group leader who takes this on and delegates responsibility to create someone else's maturity, they are more likely, and they will, produce more small group leaders who produce more small group leaders who produce more small group leaders than the small group leader who wants to keep all the authority and all the responsibility to themselves. And this is the end. This is the win, for all of our small group leaders out there listening. If you're a college student, you got 4 years, One of those is probably you in small group, so you really got 3 years.
Yeah. At
some point in time, you are leaving that campus. The question is, who are you going to leave behind?
Dang.
And in order we need to delegate this responsibility to create maturity. We need to entrust others to find, feed, and fight for the lost lambs of God, to pray for one another, to bring people into small group, to go out and find the lost, because someone has to take over for you while you're still there, and someone absolutely has to take over for you with leadership when you're inevitably gone. And the only way to do that is you delegate responsibility to create maturity now, so that people can be risen up after you.
We're here now with Ty Cannaday, a small group leader at Radford University, and he has a really awesome story about how he used a chair in their small group to actually bring about giving responsibility to the guys in his small group that helped bring out maturity in them. And I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. This is a cool story. You're an amazing guy, amazing small group leader. Why don't you start off by telling us exactly what it was you did? What was this chair? What did you do? How did it come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was last year where we started this. I was at a SICM that spring, and they kind of just, run through some things that a good small group leader does. And I saw, the one more chair idea, and it was kind of brushed over super quick. And I feel like the Lord really highlighted it to me. We had done it before, but never really to the extent where we actually casted vision for why we were doing what we were doing continually. And so we come into small group last fall, and from day one, we had 6 guys there. And so everybody comes in and sits down. They share their stories like we do on the first night, and they look and see that we have an open chair. There's 7 chairs in a circle full of 6 guys.
Yeah.
And me and my co-leader look at the guys and we say, fellas, like, no matter how many people we have here, we're going to leave this chair open because we always have room for one more.
Yeah.
We always want to be people who are missional and bringing people into the small group.
Yeah.
So kind of where the vision began was that first small group.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did they respond to that? Like, how did they respond to that? Like the first time they heard it, where they're just like, "Oh, okay, cool, man."
Yeah, I think a lot of times, when they're sharing the stories and stuff, it's already a super powerful moment.
Yeah.
So kind of capitalizing on that in that first small group was huge for us because they were already so excited about the brotherhood that was forming, and so I think you begin to see some excitement well up in them when we kind of cast this vision for the one more chair. And you can kind of just see it in their eyes. They're like, this is what we want to be as a small group.
That's really cool. So was it just that first week that you talked about it, and then there was just a chair there the entire time? Like, how did that develop throughout the semester?
Absolutely. That was the key right there. That's where we had missed it before. I think sometimes we really underestimate the power of keeping the vision before the people, especially when we're dealing with a group of guys who is kind of new to it all, whether they're new to faith or new to just Chi Alpha culture in general. I think that's where in the past we had messed up, but last year we realized, hey, every week we're going to find a different way to cast vision for this one more chair. And so, this second week we come in and, we have probably the same number of guys.
Yeah.
We had the same open chair, but we kind of cast it in a little different way. And throughout the courses of the semester, we saw that chair begin to be filled. And then one more chair would begin to be filled. And you'd hear them start to use the terminology of one more.
Yeah.
And about I would say like the fifth or sixth week, I can't remember exactly what week it was, but we had gotten to a point where we were like, man, we really need to do something to kind of just drive this point home. And me and my co-leader were just brainstorming. And I was like, man, like this might be crazy, but there's this clip from Hacksaw Ridge, this war movie. And there's this combat medic, and he's on top of this huge cliff. And the battle's like going on top of the cliff, and there's, just continual war. He, despite, the circumstances, despite the opposition, him not even having a weapon in the middle of this war, decides that he's going to continually go back into the darkness and bring people out and rescue them. And every time he comes out, he will just look at, like it zooms in really close on his face, and he says, "One more, Lord," like just one more. And so we actually brought that 4-minute clip in, and we showed it to our small group, and we said, guys, like this is what we want to be as a small group. Like we want to be people who, despite the circumstances, despite the opposition, we want to continue to go back into the darkness and just ask the Lord for one more.
Yeah.
I think that was really like the visual that kind of just nailed everything home for the guys. And you really saw them just kind of grab hold of it and run with it after that.
Yeah. What happened after that? Did they start bringing people? Like, did your small group grow? What happened?
Yeah. So we ended up going from 6 guys we had one night toward the end of the semester where we had 13. I remember we were sitting there, and one of the guys who had, he was normally there. So we had I think 12 guys. We had 13 chairs. He comes in late, and he sits down in the empty chair.
Yeah.
So then there's no more empty chairs. And in like a split second, you see 3 guys jump up out of their seat, run in the other room, and grab the chair. And that's when you kind of tear up as a small group leader, realizing that moment that they really get it. Like nothing had to be said. Like they were willing to fight for one more. And that was a huge moment.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. So man, hearing how they got it, like they got it, they took a hold of it for themselves, and it became their conviction, not just the small group. That's so cool. What'd you see from those guys after last year's small group? Some of them small group leading now? Like, have you seen like that kind of conviction that you started carrying on past just that small group year?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think 5 of those guys went through LTC. One of those guys is now our worship leader. One ended up transferring to another school, which was really sad. But then we saw 3 of those guys step up into leadership this year. And what was really powerful about that, I think, was, when you see that open chair, I think it brings personal responsibility for the Great Commission. It's not the small group leader's job only anymore to fill the seats. You look and you see the empty chair beside you, and you realize that there are people in your class, there are people in your dorms, there are people that are around you constantly that could be sitting in that chair beside you.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it kind of makes that conviction a little more personal, but also a little more attainable, because it kind of puts the ball in the small group, the regular small group person's court.
What would you say to a small group leader who might be hearing this, thinking about it, and they're like, wow, that's really cool, but they hear you say like the very first week, like you brought in the chair and you brought it in, and they're going, I don't know, there's some guys who might think this is weird. They don't even know Jesus yet. Like, shouldn't we just get them to know Jesus before bringing in the responsibility, what would you say to them about introducing that responsibility at the beginning?
Absolutely. That's so good. Such a good question. I think for me, I would say everyone craves real community at the core of who we are.
Yeah.
We long for community. We long for brotherhood. We long for sisterhood. And so, when you cast this vision to people, even they might not even be following the Lord yet, but I think maybe even for the first time in their life, they're able to see something that's beyond themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful moment, even for non-believers in that moment.
Yeah.
See, like, man, these people don't just love the people in this circle. They're fighting for people that are, outside of even people they don't even know yet. So I would say that it's never too early to start casting that vision. It may take those people a little longer to catch that vision.
Yeah.
But they've yet to see the worth of truly following Jesus. As it goes even throughout the course of the semester, as they see more and more people grab hold of it, I think it becomes more and more clear to them as well. And also for the people who, like maybe they're hearing this podcast, halfway through the semester, and they would be like, oh, it's too late. I would say it's never too late to kind of shake things up a little bit. We, as people, sometimes we kind of fall into these comfort zones, and we come into our small group of 3 or 4 or even 10,
Yeah.
We just become so easily complacent with the people that are around us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to do something to shift the perspective outwardly in the group. And so that's a sweet way to do it for sure.
Dude, awesome. Have you seen, outside of y'all's small group doing it, have you seen other small groups now doing it? And is it producing fruit also like it was for y'all, if that makes sense? Like, is it transitioning over to producing like that for other small groups that have started doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really I think it's really been cool to see in our ministry how each unique personality, each person casts vision in a different way. I think within our ministry, it's been cool to even hear some of our younger leaders use the terminology of that one more.
Yeah.
Who have came out of our small group and different small groups, to hear them, and then you hear people in their small group kind of using the same words, and you're just like, oh, like that's the power of transgenerational discipleship.
Yeah. And
so it's been really cool to see how others have kind of grabbed hold of that and implemented it, but in their own words and in their own vision casting. It's not A, B, and C, and then D is the outcome.
Yeah.
It's kind of grabbing hold of that, talking about, this is why we leave this chair, but also making that your own, not saying it like I say it, not saying it like my co-leader says it, but passing the vision in the way that the Lord's imprinted on your heart for your small group. And I think there's something really special about that.
Thank you for listening to the Small Group Leader Podcast. Our goal is to equip and encourage you as you go out and make disciples who make disciples.